Welcome to the Heads Together podcast. I'm your host, Jill Mokes, and this week I'm joined by Rosalie Millard-Evans. She is a woman after my own heart. I've had a couple of conversations with Rosalie now. We met via the women's chapter. I really identify with her and I love the conversations we've had. She's so bloody interesting. You're going to love her. Rosalie is a really great example of someone who has committed to really, in her words, living a life that's extraordinary and that combines her passion and her profession. So Rosalie comes from this family that was really entrepreneurially minded, and I don't think an office-based 9-to-5 was ever going to be her path. She's built 2 successful psychology consultancies. She also owns a business called Lead Change. And that business delivers leadership and team development through experiential learning with horses. And, that is a lot of what we're going to be talking about today because I am captivated by this. It's so interesting to me. But she also is the founder of Prime Coach, who are on a mission to make coaching more simple, scalable and affordable because they believe that everyone deserves to be the best version of themselves. And I could not agree more with that. So I'm really interested to hear more about what Prime Coach delivers. In the meantime, I also want to say that this episode of the podcast is sponsored by Horseherd. Horseherd is a registered charity working with horses to promote positive emotional health and resilience outcomes for children, young people and adults in need. And if you would like to find out more about Horseherd, you can head to horseherd.com for more. Okay, let's dive into this episode. Welcome to the Heads Together podcast. I'm Jill Mokes and I am obsessed with cutting through the noise when it comes to growing your business. Each week via intimate coaching conversations and inspirational stories, I share what it really takes to get the results you want in a way that feels right to you. I am all about attracting higher ticket opportunities, building authentic relationships, and creating the abundant, full-fat version of your dream business. I mean, how many of us have beavered away creating a light version of what we really want? The thing is, I honestly believe when you're outstanding at what you do, there is no limit to what you can achieve. So, are you ready to put our heads together and make it happen? Let's go. Rosalie, welcome to Heads Together. Thanks for joining me.
Good morning. It's a pleasure to be here.
It's my pleasure to have you. I've been really looking forward to this because we spoke a little while ago, didn't we?
We did.
Yes. And I mean, your story is so interesting and I can't wait to share this, really. We met at the women's chapter and I've had some really lovely conversations come from that. So I must give a shout out to the women's chapter because it's such a lovely group, isn't it?
So many phenomenal women making change. It's just, it's really humbling.
It really is. It really is. Yeah. And you're absolutely one of them. I wonder if we could kick off with you, perhaps giving the listeners a bit of a background of who you are.
Sure. I'm a psychologist by profession, but really, I guess most of what I do, I think was shaped earlier on in my life. So I come from a family of real change makers. My mum could be described as a force of nature. She's taught me the value of service to others, of fairness and equality. She does a lot of fundraising. And at 77, she's just completed her second master's.
Wow.
So
at 77?
At 77. So embodies that ideal of lifelong learning.
Oh my God, I'm in awe. That's amazing. Congrats to her.
Absolutely. So I think the bibliography was the most challenging bit on the last dissertation, but she's absolutely sort of embraced that growth mindset. My father is an entrepreneur, and was very disruptive in the broadcast industry. And so both of them have really inspired me to live a life that's extraordinary, to follow your passions, to follow your dreams, and to make change. And then if I sort of look back a generation, my grandfather was one of the architects of the NHS. So one of those people that sat in a room and said, actually, healthcare should be free at the point of access for everyone. Wow. And that's been massively influential in my outlook and the businesses that I've shaped as well.
That's huge. So, I mean, it's something that I think goes up and down in public perception, doesn't it, the NHS? But that initial concept of healthcare should be free. And I know I have lots of clients across the pond in the States who are really just in awe of what we have here in the UK. So to have been one of the people in the room, you're making that decision or contributing to that decision is amazing.
Yeah, and I think those values of equality and fairness are something that have really I've embodied through my life and career as well.
I knew there was a reason we got on so well. Because I just literally, there is something in me that injustice is probably the one thing that it can make me feel physically sick. I can't bear it. I just can't bear it. So yeah, I hear you on that. So you really do come from a background of kind of disruptive thinkers, I guess, people who are willing to go against the grain, against the normal expectations of 2.5 children and a semi.
Yeah, and get excited by that. I find it motivating and exciting.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm guessing that background meant that an office-based 9-to-5 kind of run-of-the-mill job was never going to be on the cards for you.
It was never going to happen. I mean, I have done my fair share in consultancies and in-house, but no, I felt like I was born to be an entrepreneur. I was an entrepreneur by birth. And I also have quite severe dyslexia. So, my mum and dad were told that I'd never learn to read and write when I was 7. And actually, if we're thinking about things that shape my life, the dyslexia has massively as well, because it's made me a problem solver and I see things differently, and it's made me resilient and tenacious in getting things done. And now I see my son, who's 10, has dyslexia, and he struggles in the school system, but I keep saying to him, it's all right. What's difficult for you now will be the thing that makes you.
Wow.
I've been made my dyslexia, it's not been a barrier for me. It's enabled me.
Yeah. Tell me more about that. So when you say like it's enabled you, is that because it kind of became something that forced you to rise to challenges?
Yeah, it does. And also I see the world differently. So I see endless possibilities. I see problems or solutions where other people don't see them. I'm a massive optimist because of my dyslexia. I always believe that there's a way to get things done or to solve the problem. There's always another way of doing things. You don't have to do things the way everybody else is. You don't have to fit the mold. You can find your own way. And I guess that's what entrepreneurs need to keep them focused and keep them driven a lot of the time.
I think you're right. I think finding our own way and doing things our own way is probably the only path to success for entrepreneurs. I think that's where so many entrepreneurs fail is when they are desperately trying to create a carbon copy of what has worked for someone else. That always seems to be, a recipe for disaster. We have to find our own way.
And you find people that dyslexia often have great creativity, and that can be a real strength. And actually, despite kind of popular belief, communication, persuasion and influence is a really key skill of dyslexics as well. They might not be able to write it down or read it out to you, but they can talk and chat and influence and empathize and understand.
Because they need to have that skill, don't they?
Yeah, absolutely. Because you can't do the written words so well. You do have to learn to be able to articulate yourself, and that be kind of your superpower.
So entrepreneurship, absolutely in your blood. It was always what you were going to do. So what was your first sort of venture into that arena?
I qualified as a chartered psychologist. So I did undergrad in psychology and a master's in organizational and occupational psychology, which basically means you end up working in businesses, doing assessments, so large scale assessment centers, training programs, leadership programs, building lots of competency frameworks. If you've ever had the joy of being interviewed for a job, you've probably been asked to meet certain competencies. Well, it's often the psychologists that are there working out what those behaviours and competencies should be for an organisation and a job.
Right. Key competencies. God, that's a phrase I haven't heard for a long time.
Yeah,
it's giving me some sort of terrifying corporate throwback. What are your key competencies?
Can you give me an example of when you
can you give me an example of a time when?
Yeah.
And then you'd be forever racking your brain to try and twist your answer to make yourself look good. So it'd be like, can you give me an example of when something went wrong? Yeah. Well, this went wrong, but I dealt with it fabulously.
That's it.
Brilliant.
Absolutely. And that, I love psychology for the evidence base and the research. So again, an interesting kind of dyslexia superpower is I can consume really large quantities of information. So I'm not great in detail, but I'm great at reading information and seeing patterns and seeing themes and drawing it out, which is often the skill you need when you're working in that kind of environment to bring different frameworks and strategies together and make sense of them to the human mind. As much as I enjoyed that, as I say, I've always been looking for the time when I would set up on my own. So I just had my first child, Imogen, so just over 12 years ago, and I was working at Cable and Wireless. As they were then. They got bought by Vodafone and taken over eventually. And I was designing and running the senior leadership program there. So it was a year-long program, and the sort of top talent leaders were on it. And it took them through all the great things like strategy and communication and influencing others. And I was looking for something a bit different for it. And someone said, "Oh, you should go see this guy, Andrew, about the horses." Well, this piqued my interest.
No, but you must have thought at the time, I'm sorry, what? Did you? What? I thought for a minute you said horses.
But you know, they had me on horses because I grew up riding. So horses have always been a real passion for me. So I was like, horses? Really? That sounds interesting. Off I go and meet this chap, Andrew, from a company called Lead Change. And we met and he gave me a little demo of what he did. And I was absolutely blown away. And so I bought that whole leadership program to Lead Change to work with horses, to be coached on how they show up, what their impact is on others, what kind of energy they bring, and their emotional awareness. And I was just blown away because the thing I was coaching each of these leaders on was the thing that came up with the horses.
So we've got these leaders going through this top drawer leadership program, and now horses are entering the frame. Like for most people, that's like, okay. What was it that when you went and met with this guy and he demonstrated what he's doing? Well, first of all, what was he doing? Yeah. And then what was it that captivated you and you thought, no, this would really work well for these people?
There was a fair bit of eyebrow raising and eye bonkers questions, to be fair, when I said that's what we were going to do. But ultimately, the trust to go there and embrace the experience, which is what the group did. So what they do is you go into an indoor arena. So it's kind of like a covered space with a surface that the horses are on. And the horse comes in, the horse has on a head collar, but you don't work with the rope. So they take the rope off. So the horse has choice about where the horse wants to be and what it wants to do. And then the people are set different challenges and tasks, like see if you can take the horse for a walk around the arena or through some poles or ask the horse to take a few steps backwards. And what happens in these interactions is the horses just give this really lovely, very honest, instant feedback on how people are showing up. So if you think horses have been around, modern horse, for about 5 million years, compared to us, we've been around for just under 1 million. So to give you a bit of context there, so over that 5 million years, horses have evolved to really flourish, to be really good at what they do, which is
they're really good at being horses.
Really good at being
aren't they?
horses.
Do you know what I mean? And I'm not being flippant when I say that. It's just like they are very self-actualized as horses.
They're very self-assured. So they're good at living in a herd. They're good at communicating in a herd. So successful bonding, teamwork, collaboration. And they're very good at reading the room, if you like. So, they're a prey animal. What they're good at is knowing when there's danger, being able to read intention. And how that's evolved in modern horses is they're able to read the emotional energy of people, horses, because they're all part of that extended environment they're in, and respond to it. So if the energy you turn up with is authentic and genuine, then they tend to move towards it. And say you're a bit nervous or a bit anxious or your mind's elsewhere, they'll tend to move away from it. They'll respond the same way people do, but horses will be very obvious in their response. People will mask, right? So they might think one thing and do something else. Right? They might think, oh, Jill's a bit off today. I don't really like how she's turning up. There's obviously stuff going on for her, but, I'll just be nice anyway and mask it.
Exactly, yeah. Is that what you've had to do this morning, Rosalie? I'll just be nice to him anyway.
Nice. You go to a dinner party. You go to a friend's dinner party and they've had a row. And no one's told you they've had a row, but they've had a row. But everyone just carries on being polite. No one goes, oh, there's a terrible atmosphere here, isn't there? So
how early can we leave?
Oh, it's the children's babysitter's called. They've got to go home. So horses don't mask. They can't be duplicitous. They can't think one thing and behave in another way. So if they don't like how you're showing up, they move away from it. Or they won't connect with you, they won't follow you. But if you come with a genuine energy, you're emotionally aware, you're tuned into them, so you're fully present, then you just see this magic happen where people that have never been around horses will walk off around your arena and the horses will follow them and be relaxed and engaged and exactly as you would like to lead your team. So it's all those pieces that just make them such valuable teachers around leadership and teamwork.
It's such a fresh lens on this. I'm really fascinated by this because, so the first thing I'm thinking is that I'm a bit scared of horses, if I'm honest. But it isn't that I wouldn't want that. I would want them to trust me and embrace me, but I am a bit scared of them. So, what happens when people show up and they've got that nervousness about them?
It's not unusual. They're big animals. They have a lot of presence. It's one of the reasons why working with them is a really good leveler, because, they have that kind of impact on people. But normally what we find is the people that are the most nervous about it are the ones that get the most powerful experience, because actually what we talk about is self-awareness. So how aware am I of what's happening in my body and in my mind when I'm feeling a bit anxious or I'm feeling a bit nervous? And do I realize the impact that has on other people? And then can I do things to control it? So as well as working with adults, we also have a charity, Horseworld, that have sponsored this program and work with young people. And essentially what we do with young people is emotional intelligence in a nutshell. So can I notice what's happening in my own body or mind? Am I self-aware? Can I observe what impact that's having on the horse? So I'm feeling nervous. Maybe the horse's head is up a little bit higher. Its ears are flicking around. It's kind of sensing that there might be some danger or something to look out for. Mm-hmm. Can I then make some choices about myself that then impact the horse? So, for example, can I do some box breathing? Can I just relax my shoulders, ground my feet? Can I tell myself I'm safe? Different strategies and toolkits that then have an impact on how I'm showing up. And what impact does that have on the horse? And normally what happens is as the person relaxes, the horse relaxes, and it'll tend to drop its head, to breathe more deeply, to sometimes come and nuzzle the person. So a really, really strong experience of the change you can make in other people by changing things in yourself. So, if I want to create something in others, I've got to create it in myself first.
What a great leadership lesson. And really, that is the reason, isn't it? Presumably that is the reason that you wanted to give people that experience, because that's the crux. That's the lesson right there. So I've seen firsthand the amazing intuition, I think it must be, that horses have. My son James, as a lot of listeners will know, is autistic. Mm-hmm. He's sort of only semi-verbal, he does talk, but it's very repetitive. So, he's quite severely autistic, and he loves to be around horses. He's not really keen on animals, and he would hate an animal to come up to him. Mm-hmm. But if there's an animal that's standing still, he will love to go and pat it or be near it. And so he can't bear dogs, cats, anything like that, because they're too unpredictable. But there's something about horses that they definitely do sense. They just go so steady when James is around, even though his energy is quite frenetic. And I think there's something really intuitive that they understand. And this is where I think it is that I think there's an understanding that of his kind of innocence and intention is good. And I think the horses pick up on that.
They do. And they're very, very intuitive. Quite often we'll get asked, the horse will be standing in a group in the arena, maybe with the team, and the horse will come up to one person in the team. I do have to say, normally it is a woman, and the horse will come up and sort of nuzzle in, and they're, well, why's the horse come up to her? Why her, not us? And I'll say, how do you feel about horses? Oh, I love them. Isn't this horse gorgeous? I mean, he's just the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. And I'm like, well, that's why the horse has come to her, because when that's what you're giving off is love and adoration, people are drawn to it. When you're giving off that genuine sense of connection and openness, animals, people, they want to be around you. It's a very kind of pull energy. And absolutely, going back to your son, the roots of what we do are in therapy. Equine therapy was the kind of precursor to this. And whilst I'm a psychologist, what we do isn't therapy, but I would say it's definitely therapeutic. We often have tears. People feel very vulnerable and can be vulnerable. They have very honest conversations with their teams and with each other. And we talk a lot about psychological safety and how we create that for ourselves and others. So working sometimes with kind of family officers and people that are very focused on security. So they might be focused on their physical security and their online security. But how do you create psychological security? So if you're under pressure or you're in a situation where you need to act and think fast, how do you prepare for that by knowing tools and techniques you need that can quickly create a psychologically safe space for you and for your family or for your team? And the horses can help us do that, because you're getting this lovely in the moment response. And, I count myself incredibly lucky to have had that child's conversation where someone said, you should go and see this guy, Andrew.
Talk about a sliding doors moment, Rosalie. Because imagine if you'd have just said, yeah, interesting. And I love horses, but I work with leadership.
And absolutely. So, I took that leadership group. I then trained with Andrew in lead change. So I left full-time work. I set up on my own, set up my first business psychology consultancy. And I decided to train with Andrew as part of that. And I did some freelance consultancy work with lead change for a few years. And then after 3 years of that, and Andrew said, why don't you buy the business? So, I'm ready to retire. Let's swap. And so I did that. So I do say to people, be careful of coming on a workshop, because you never know where you might end up. But from that one chance encounter to buying lead change, and now I travel all around the globe: Amsterdam, Istanbul, Lisbon, States, Nepal. And I work with horses anywhere. So I just need a horse to be a horse. So I'll find.
So that's your only requirement. So if someone, I know a lot of my listeners are in the States. So if you're listening and this is like, oh my God, I would love this. It's like, they just need to find you a horse and you can do it. I love that.
Find a horse. I mean, the team did go to Nepal, which was probably one of the most challenging places they found a horse. But you're never that far away from a horse.
Can I tell you how stupid my brain is sometimes? Do you know where my brain went then? My brain literally went, but in Nepal, surely the horses wouldn't understand what you were saying.
People often say that. They're like, do they understand? If we're in Spain, do we need to speak to the horses in Spanish?
My God, honestly, that is honestly the first thing that came into my head.
But I mean, horses' communication is so sophisticated. There's 200 plus non-verbal signals that a herd will give each other to communicate facial expressions, movements in their bodies, swishing of the tail, tensing of the muscles, eyes. So it's actually quite sophisticated. And you see in wild herds, kind of in juxtaposition to how we may have traditionally viewed leadership, maybe not now, but sort of 20 years ago, there is no dominant horse. There is no dominant stallion that leads the herd.
Is that true? So the herd doesn't have a dominant...
No, the stallion will sometimes be at the back and will be making sure that the slowest and the weakest, the eldest and the youngest are keeping up and are safe. And there'll often be an elder mare, so a female horse, that's people look towards. So I even see it in our, they're not really herds, but in our groups of horses in the field, that the eldest mare will often tell the youngest when it's time to stand in the shade and when it's time to go and have a group of water and sort of move them on. Come on, we're all going to go and stand over here now.
That sounds quite similar to elephants as well.
Yes. Yeah, and it's that very collaborative, shared leadership, but it's a serving role, not a dominance role. And again, so you just learn so much from that.
Absolutely. I'm just thinking, God, I hope that if humans survive for 5 million years, let's hope we evolve in that same way.
Yes, Jill, absolutely. That's, it's inspirational and aspirational.
It is inspirational. It is inspirational.
Be more horse.
Be more horse, exactly. Gosh, so true. So thinking about the work that you do, and you say you can do this, you do it all around the world. Who makes for really good clients for you for this? What kind of organizations embrace this kind of thing?
Well, I think the conversation's changed a lot. So the company's been running since 2002. And I think back then, people really were like, horses, what are you talking about? But then, if you have a conversation with people today, most of them understand the concept of experiential learning. Of, people go sailing, people go and have team days out, you can do all sorts of different activities that help you bond and connect as a team. So if you think the horses is like that, but it goes another level because you're coaching people, both one-to-one and as a group. So it's that combination of I'm having the experience, but I'm also being coached in the moment to really become aware of the insights and play with different ways of being to see what different outcomes I get. It's a nice, safe environment because I'd let you into a secret. The horse doesn't really mind whether you're a good leader or not. The horse will go back to its stable. He'd go back.
You mean the horse isn't doing an assessment at the end of the day?
I'm not going to go back and talk to his mates and be like, well, I'm not going to go and work for Microsoft.
Yeah, you should have seen this dickhead I had today.
Absolutely. No, they will, they'll go back to their field or stable and get on with their life. So it's a safe space. It's a non-judgmental place. So you can play with different things and being different and get that lovely real feedback, but without any of the risk of trying it with your actual team.
Yeah. That's the point though, isn't it? Is that you probably wouldn't try it with your actual team. For better or worse, you probably wouldn't.
No, because you might be worried about the impact. I mean, generally people come to us in kind of 3 different ways. So we're either part of a leadership program, leaders from across the business come along. We've worked with Sodexo, with Microsoft, with all sorts of large corporates in that way. And all people come to us as a team. So maybe a senior team, an exec team, sometimes team from across the business, but they come as a team. And so what can we learn about how we interact with each other? So then the focus is on play as a team and playing with different behaviours and ways of collaborating. And, we'll overlay with a lot of psychology theory. So there'll be emotional intelligence. There might be, looking at the different dysfunctions of a team, but there's different ways that we can bring that learning to life and give it a structure so that as well as getting this great, very memorable experience, you're getting that really solid commercial and business outcomes as well. So, you're coming away with a team that has greater trust, that understands the behaviours and the strengths behaviours and the behaviours that they need to build more of in order to really succeed, deeper understanding of one another and how they show up, all of those pieces. So you're getting those really important outcomes, as well as, I'll be honest, people do have a lot of fun as well. I can't lie.
I bet they do. But I think, isn't that the best combination? It's experiential learning that's really tailored to specific outcomes that are going to be beneficial for the organisation who's probably footing the bill. But at the same time, it's still a really fun, and I loathe to say bonding in case people get flashbacks to team bonding, raft building, which obviously I'm scarred for life by. Bloody raft
Absolutely.
building. I think it's an amazing way to bring a team together as well, because presumably, these are people who, I shouldn't say presumably. I'm just wondering, is it always a group that's coming from one organisation?
No. So the one organisation that I do a lot of work with, and were one of my first clients when I bought Lead Change, both my father-in-law and my father were part of this organisation. So again, a real kind of family connection.
Wow.
It's a group called Vistage, and they are a coaching organisation. Originally, when my dad joined, it was called Tech, and it was about bringing entrepreneurs and leaders in the tech industry together to kind of do peer learning and peer coaching, where you maybe didn't have a board around you or people that you can sound things off at work, where you were very much in that quite lonely entrepreneurial role. So it's like, how do I get different perspectives? And then Vistage is an organisation that does that with CEOs from all size organisations now across the country. So there's different groups and there's a chair that coaches them. And anyway, they go away and they do these fantastic retreats every year. They're totally open to learning. So they're a really good people to work with. So they're all absolutely embrace it. And they do all sorts of wild and wonderful things on their retreats. It's kind of their thing. So I go all around the country doing retreats for them. And I'd say they're all from different businesses in that context.
Oh, I love that. So that must make it really interesting as well. If you've got a group coming together that don't know each other that well, that puts another lens on it too.
It does. And talk about the women's chapter that you mentioned earlier on. I'm looking at working with a couple of people within the women's chapter as well to put down retreats. I spoke to the lovely Abs, who does some fantastic retreats and events for women. And we're going to be looking at how we integrate the horses. So watch this space, women's chapter.
Oh, wonderful. And of course, myself and my partner in crime, Lauren Jones, who owns an amazing company called Brand by Boudica, we actually co-host retreats under our Unapologetic Retreats umbrella. So we will definitely be talking and exploring, because it's just something so different.
It's so lovely. And the best thing is, wherever in the world you want to run your own unapologetic retreats, we can find horses and do it there.
Yeah.
We have worked on a beach once. We roped off an arena on a beach.
Did you? Oh, I bet that was gorgeous.
Absolutely. Slightly distracting. One of the more distracting environments I've done it on, but it definitely very memorable.
Yeah, that's part of what it's all about, isn't it?
Yeah.
Absolutely. So organisations can hire you to come in. How else can people work with you? If people are listening and thinking, God, this sounds really fascinating, does it need to be a group?
No, absolutely. We can do really deep, focused, one-to-one, immersive experiences, as well as the horses because of my psychology background and my leadership background, I've got all sorts of different tools and techniques that we use for working one-to-one and taking people on that really deep journey of discovery. So it might be an individual, it might be a family group that we work with, but we will design something completely bespoke that will just guide you through a series of experiences that open and enlighten, a bit like the unapologetic retreats, being able to do that really lovely deep work. And that's something I get a lot of joy from as well.
Oh, I can imagine. I think that sounds absolutely like I would love to do that. Use the word immersive experience. I feel like that is like almost the definition, isn't it? Is to really immerse yourself in that world. So there's the group experience and there's these immersive, more private experiences. That just sounds absolutely amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. And they're tailored to the needs of the individual. So we can kind of go anywhere and explore anything. So it goes back to that endless possibility. So I get really excited about putting those together.
You're quite a limitless thinker, aren't you?
Absolutely. Yes. I say absolutely in response to limitless because I'm absolutely limitless.
Full stop.
Categorically.
No, but I do honestly feel it does radiate from you. And I think what's so interesting is that when we just looping back a little bit, and you were saying that, part of that is your upbringing for sure. You were kind of born with this, but also your dyslexia as well has really like fostered this. Of course, there's a solution. Of course, there's possible.
Solution. And also some great big dollops of luck. I mean, the introduction to Andrew, I remember in that first session with the horses standing in the arena, and although I'd had horses most of my life, I'd been away from them for about 10 years, moved to London, and I just remember being in that arena and the smell and the sensation, just an overwhelming sense of this is where I need to be. I need to come back to this. So it was a real epiphany for me. So, I mean, I count myself really lucky that somehow I've managed to combine my passion for psychology and people with horses, that I get to go around the world and meet really interesting people and gorgeous horses and get paid for it. I mean, don't tell anyone, but you can't really call it a job.
I feel like that as a coach. I honestly feel like that as a coach. But hang on, I get paid to have these really interesting conversations. That's madness. Aren't we lucky? Aren't we lucky to feel that way?
That's a gratitude.
I was talking. Do you know what was funny? I was with James actually, and I was in the Costa Coffee. James at the weekend.
Oh, I thought you were going to say the Costa del Sol. That's why I was like, oh.
Oh no, Costa Coffee.
Can you tell I'm craving sunshine?
Yeah, exactly. But there was no table to sit at, and James has such a routine. He does have to have a table to sit at. So I was getting a bit like, oh God, this is going to be a nightmare. He's not going to be happy about this. And this really nice couple of guys let me sit down, and it was father and son. And I just got chatting to them. Really lovely people. So Owen and Milo, if you're listening, you made for a very lovely coffee date. But the son Milo he's a travel writer for the Mirror. And my first reaction to that was the same as yours. It's like living the dream. Yeah. And that's how I feel about you, Rosalie. Oh. Living the dream, travel and work.
Exactly.
And then what else? So what else takes up your time? Because you've got that, but you've also got Prime Coach. So where does Prime Coach fit in with all of this?
I'm lucky not just to have one passion.
I know.
Prime Coach was born out of COVID. So I met my co-founder, Paddy, while we were working on a huge program for Travis Perkins. So we did coaching, individual and group coaching for over 1,000 people. And the impact was amazing. But what we noticed was it was the one-to-one coaching that really had the most power and made the most change for people. And the program's interesting because instead of being focused at the senior level, because it was resilience and wellbeing, it was all the way through the organisation. So came far down as their sort of branch managers who were coping with a lot of stuff. They were coping with COVID, families, keeping the business running, all of this stuff. And it just started sparking my dyslexic kernel of an idea where I was like, why is coaching always aimed at that exec senior level? It's like you've got a EAP, your employee assistance program, at one end. You don't go to the EAP, you don't use a physio till your elbow hurts, you don't go to counselling until your relationship's falling apart. And then you've got this, very high ticket exec coaching, which obviously has great value at the other end. But that equality piece kicked in. It's like, why can't we have coaching, a proactive, whole person type coaching that sits in the middle of the organisation? Because why doesn't everyone deserve to be the best version of themselves? Why is it only this select group, your top talent or your exec? And so that was where the kernel of the idea came from. And we set about kind of changing and disrupting the coaching model slightly so that we could deliver that.
I love it. I love it. I quite like how your brain works. You are very much a, that doesn't sound fair. Let's change that.
And so our purpose is everyone deserves to be the best version of themselves. So what we've tried to do at Brain Coach is simplify coaching. So we use matching rather than chemistry. So where traditional coaching, you might say, I want a coach. I'm going to go look at 5 coaches. The organisation's got to find them. You read the profiles and you have chemistry sessions with a couple of them. Then you and ah over which one's going to be best for you. So we just cut that whole process out. And we use a matching algorithm and our own experiences of our coaches and knowledge of our coaches to match people based on what they want to be coached on. And that came about because my research brain went and said, chemistry, so where's the evidence for that? And actually, if you look, there's very little evidence that chemistry sessions result in better coaching outcomes. And in fact, you get some things like unconscious bias. So you might recruit a coach in your own image. And then you might have some unconscious bias to kind of please them or say things that please them. So actually, by using more research and evidence-based criteria to match people with the right coach, you're getting to that ROI much quicker. So you're simplifying the process for the organisation. No burden of finding, matching, quality assuring coaches. People just fill in their profile. You can literally buy credits today, have your people coaching by the end of the week. And that's what we've tried to do. And that's how it's scalable and affordable. So we're dead excited about growing it and taking it to new heights. So we're just at the end of year 1 and we're looking forward to what's to come.
Oh, congratulations. I think it's a fantastic model. It must feel good. It must feel good, like you say, to just make coaching more accessible. I think anything that can do that makes good coaching more accessible.
I work with my really good friend, Els, and with my co-founder, Paddy, and we have a great time as well working together. So again, love life, really.
And that always helps, right? A good team really helps.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Shout out to my team. Yeah, definitely.
Although we have a strong commercial angle, we deliver great ROI for our clients, we also have a really strong pro bono focus. So when clients work with us, they can either pick a charity that they already support, so it's supporting their ESG policy, or we also work with different charities and we deliver pro bono coaching. So everyone really does deserve. So I say just because your business can't afford it, or just because you're not at a point in your life where you can access it, shouldn't be a barrier to you having this life-changing resource, to having access to one-to-one coaching.
Love that model. And speaking of charity, I just wanted you to quickly touch on our sponsor for this episode. Something that I'm very excited to do is Horse Herd. That's the name of the charity, isn't it? Horse Herd.
Yes, Horse Herd. So Horse Herd basically does what Lead Change does. It focuses on building emotional awareness, emotional resilience. We work with young people, we work with veterans, we work with NHS staff. We've worked with 500 children through Buckingham Healthcare Trust in the last 2 years. And we're looking, at the moment, we're working on becoming part of the clinical pathways for people that are on the waiting list for anxiety to come and do sessions with us. But teaching kids resilience, confidence, and emotional agility, really. And so we're absolutely passionate about that. We're always looking for companies to sponsor programs. If anyone out there is like, that's amazing, I want to know more. Or if you work with a group of people that you think might really benefit from that kind of intervention, then check out the website, which is horsehound.com, and you can find out a little bit more.
So thank you for sharing everything. If people want to find out a bit more about you and how they can work with you in all of these different ways, what's their first port of call? Where can they go?
Well, you can find me on LinkedIn. If you're interested in knowing about the horses, there's lots of videos and photos and case studies on our website, which is leadchange.com. And if you're interested in finding out about how we're changing the world with Prime Coach, then you can visit primecoach.uk, not co.uk, just primecoach.uk. And that will take you through to our website and you can contact us from there.
Perfect. And of course, I will put all of those links in the show notes. Rosalie, you've been a fascinating guest to have on. I'm really grateful. I'm really captivated by Lead Change and Prime Coach, to be honest with you, because they're both pretty innovative, which I now expect from you, from our conversations. It's going to be something fresh thinking for sure. So thank you for coming on and sharing. It's been such a pleasure to talk to you.
Well, thank you. Thank you for guiding me through my first ever podcast, Jill. So excited.
I hope it wasn't too painful.
I've loved it.
Ah, good. Well, thank you so much. And I'll speak to you again soon. Bye for now. I hope you enjoyed this episode and that getting our heads together this week has filled your mind with what's possible. If you love the show, would you do me a massive favour, please? Would you leave a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts? It would really help me put more heads together, reach more ears and expand more minds. Until next week, bye for now.